What if I told you that one woman's wisdom stopped a violent war before it even began, saved her entire household from destruction, and changed the future of a nation? Abigail's story in the Bible is one of those hidden gems, one of the most powerful accounts you've probably never heard in full. It's a story about courage, faith, and the incredible impact of choosing wisdom over fear. Abigail's name means father's joy, but her early life was anything but joyful. She was known to be both beautiful and intelligent, a woman with remarkable insight and grace. Yet she found herself married to a man who was the complete opposite, a man named Nabal, whose name fittingly means fool. Nabal was wealthy, owning thousands of sheep and goats, but his foolishness and arrogance blinded him to the dangers around him and the needs of others. Imagine living with someone so stubborn and reckless that he could bring ruin not just upon himself, but on everyone in his household. That was Nabal. Despite his riches, he was cruel and harsh in his dealings and utterly lacked wisdom. Abigail, in stark contrast, was a woman of discernment and kindness, managing their household with care and tact. But how did a woman like Abigail end up married to a man like Nabal? In biblical times, marriages among wealthy families were often arranged for political or economic reasons, not love. Abigail likely had little say in the matter. Her father probably thought he was securing her future by marrying her to a rich man, but no one could foresee the trouble that lay ahead. One of the most dramatic moments in Abigail's story comes during the sheep shearing season, a festive time when landowners would share their bounty with their workers and neighbors as a sign of goodwill. David, yes, the future king of Israel, then a fugitive hiding from King Saul, had been protecting Nabal's shepherds from bandits and wild animals. It was an unspoken agreement. David's men guarded the flocks, and in return, they expected some generosity when the sheep were sheared. David sent some of his men to ask Nabal for food and supplies. Their request was respectful, even humble. They asked only for what was needed to sustain their men during the celebration, not for riches or spoils. But Nabal's response was shocking. He insulted David's messengers, calling David nothing more than a runaway servant, and mockingly asking, "Who is David?" Nabal's words were more than disrespect, they were dangerous. By refusing to honor David, he insulted the man God had chosen to be king. When David heard Nabal's reply, he was furious. This wasn't just a personal slight, it was a threat to his future and his people. David ordered his men to prepare for battle, determined to wipe out Nabal and every male in his household. The stage was set for disaster. Blood would be spilled, and a once prosperous household would be destroyed, all because of one man's foolish arrogance. But here's where Abigail's wisdom shines brightest. When a servant ran to her with the news of David's wrath, she acted quickly and decisively. She didn't argue with her husband, who was likely drunk and unapproachable. Instead, Abigail gathered a generous offering: bread, wine, roasted sheep, grain, raisins, and figs. Then, without telling Nabal, she set out to meet David. Imagine the courage it took for Abigail to ride out at night, alone, to face a furious warrior with swords drawn. She didn't approach David with fear or hesitation. Instead, she dismounted, fell on her face, and pleaded for mercy, not just for herself, but for her household and for David himself. Abigail's words were powerful and wise beyond her years. She took the blame upon herself, calling her husband foolish and reckless not out of spite, but out of deep concern for the lives at stake. She warned David that shedding blood and anger would only bring guilt and regret, that justice ultimately belonged to God. Her plea wasn't just for mercy, it was a profound reminder to trust God's timing and his plan. Even when the path seemed uncertain, David's anger melted away as he listened to Abigail. Her humility and courage softened his heart, reminding him of his higher calling as God's anointed king. The moment was transformational. David praised God for sending Abigail to stop him from making a grave mistake. He accepted her generous gifts and agreed to spare Nabal's household from destruction. Think about this. A woman, riding out alone at night, stepping right into the middle of a dangerous situation, and through her wise words, turning away a war. That's not just bravery, it's divine wisdom in action. Abigail had the presence of mind to see beyond the immediate conflict and trust in God as greater purpose. She was a peacemaker, a savior in disguise. When Abigail returned home, she found Nabal still feasting and oblivious to the disaster he had nearly caused. The next morning, when Nabal heard what Abigail had done, his heart failed him. Some say he suffered a stroke, others say it was divine judgment, but within 10 days, Nabal was dead, leaving Abigail a widow in a harsh and uncertain world. But Abigail's story didn't end there. When David heard of Nabal's death, he recognized God's hand in justice and sent for Abigail to become his wife. This was more than a marriage. It was a divine appointment. Abigail went from being the wife of a fool to the bride of a future king, joining God's unfolding plan for Israel. Life as David's wife was far from easy. He was constantly on the run, fleeing Saul's relentless pursuit, leading battles, and facing danger at every turn. Abigail didn't enter a palace of comfort. She entered a life filled with trials and uncertainty. But her faith in God's purpose kept her steadfast and strong. Through every hardship, she remained a pillar of wisdom and grace. One particularly striking moment came when the Amalekites raided David's camp and captured women and children, including Abigail herself. David, guided by God, launched a victorious rescue mission, bringing her and the others back to safety. This powerful exchange showed the mutual faith and protection between them, a testament to God's providence in the lives of his people. Though the Bible doesn't reveal much more about Abigail's later years, her legacy endures as a shining example of courage, faith, and wisdom. She wasn't just a beautiful woman or a royal wife. She was a woman of action who heard God's voice and boldly stepped into her calling. Her story reminds us that God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Abigail's life challenges each of us today. When fear threatens to take hold, will we choose wisdom and courage? When circumstances seem overwhelming, will we trust God's greater plan? Abigail teaches us that a single act of faith, grounded in discernment and humility, can change the course of history, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Her story also highlights the power of peacemaking. In a world often driven by conflict, Abigail's example shows that wisdom, kindness, and humility can stop wars before they start. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is speak truth with love and step forward with faith, even when the odds are against us. So next time you face a difficult situation, whether it's a personal conflict, a workplace challenge, or a moment of uncertainty, remember Abigail. Remember the woman who stopped a battle with wise words, who saved lives by trusting God's justice, and who changed the future of a nation through faith and courage. Her story stands as a powerful and timeless reminder that God deeply honors those who place their trust fully in Him and choose to walk humbly in His wisdom. Abigail's life teaches us that wisdom isn't just about knowledge or cleverness. It's about a heart aligned with God's will, courage to act when it matters most, and faith to believe that God's plans are greater than our fears. If Abigail's incredible story has touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who might need encouragement in their own journey. And subscribe so you don't miss more eye-opening stories from the Bible that bring fresh insight and hope to our lives today. And while you're here, I'd love for you to join the conversation. Leave a comment below telling me, what is the biggest lesson or truth from Abigail's life that speaks to you personally? Might her example of courage, faith, or wisdom challenge or encourage you in your own walk? Your story matters, and hearing from you can encourage others too. Always remember, just like Abigail, no matter how overwhelming the challenges you face might seem, you have the ability to turn those trials into triumphs. God's wisdom is not out of reach. It's always available to those who seek it with an open heart and a willing spirit. When we invite God's wisdom into our decisions and actions, it can truly change everything: our perspective, our relationships, and even the course of our lives. So be bold, be faithful, and watch how God uses your story for His glory.